Good morning, friends. One of the modalities I was trained in when I was a children's therapist is called TF-CBT. So again, let's talk about what that means. So TF-CBT stands for Trauma-Focused Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. It's designed for therapy and trauma therapy with children. And honestly, it was one of my favorite things to do. And I've had a couple of adults that we've dug into some of those things. But if you're looking for a therapist for your child, TF-CBT is something that's worth looking at, especially if there's been traumatic events. So let me explain the structure of what that is. So for me, I was trained 12, 13 years ago in this, so it may have evolved over the years. So this is what I understand it to be as of my experience. So there's a workbook that each kid has, and it walks us through some really fantastic stuff. So at the beginning, it helps the kids learn skills like belly breathing or progressive muscle relaxation or identifying feelings in our body. You remember that body exercise we did a while ago? That's from TF-CBT. And helping become familiar with the language of just how do we identify and communicate and take care of ourselves when we're doing this. Then, after we've done that, and we've established a really good pattern of skills to help cope with those things, there's also an emotional first aid kit that we create of like, what can they do when they get stressed or scared or worried or can't sleep? And sometimes it's draw or listen to music or journal or play or whatever. Then the funnest part is the creative part that the kid gets to have access to. So what that looks like is each kid decides how they're going to tell their story. So I had one kid who wanted to do it as a puppet show. And at some point, the parent or loved one or caregiver comes in and they present it to them as part of like, hey, this is the story that I experienced. And so I had one kid that did a puppet show, and we made puppets for all the characters in their story and then played it out. I had one client who was like an amazing artist, this little 10-year-old girl who could draw people and you knew how they felt even though they didn't even have faces. She just body language. And so she drew a story like in a storybook. There are ways to do that where I had a kid who, when we were doing play therapy, they acted it out with characters in the dollhouse. I had, there's all kinds of different ways to tell our story. Some people will do it as a comic book. There's even an example in the training about someone doing it as a radio show. I was like, what would you tell a kid that was struggling with the same thing? And they have that conversation with themselves and script it out. And their story gets told in a way that they can process at their level. And we as parents get to hear it and hold space for it if we're a safe person. If we're not a safe person, that's a whole other thing to work on. But if you're looking for a therapist, especially for a kid who's had an upsetting event, an upsetting event could be something like abuse, sexual abuse, bullying, grief and loss unexpectedly of a parent, caregiver, friend, anything. You'd be surprised at what kids feel disrupted by. And all of those are valid. Those all make sense because it's change and it's hard and they're trying to understand it. But if you're looking for a therapist for your kid and you see TF-CBT on the list, that's what that is. And you can try it. You could not try it. There's all kinds of different modalities, again, that are there for kids and for grown-ups. But that's what TF-CBT is. If you're like, I don't know what that means. Sometimes therapists have lots of letters behind their name, but you don't even know what that means. So that's TF-CBT. Have a good day.